ring thing. They hit me up today,
Oh, nice.
but I don't want to say it over live
Okay.
internet. Like, well, I mean, if we're just a couple people hanging out, it's fine. But if it's on Facebook and stuff,
It is on Facebook. So tell me whenever we stop broadcasting.
Okay.
Cool. So I'll give you a chance to grab that link and then we'll get started.
Page, let me see. I don't see it. Oh, I see it now.
There it is.
I'll share it to both my page and the 10 drink minimum. I think. Oh, no. Can I do that?
Hey Jackie. Welcome. But our hats are like the same color. So you're right, Fern.
I could change my beard. Do I need to change hats?
Oh, I have a True Consequences hat I could put on.
I could put my truth or consequences hat on. Just so we double match.
Oh, that's so cool, Mac. All right. I'll give a little spiel before we get going here. Everyone on Facebook is like, what the fuck is going on? All right. Well, welcome everybody to another Get Vocal stream of True Consequences with an extra special guest, Mr. Chris from 10 Drink Minimum. I almost screwed that up.
Whoa, you've been son.
You want to know what I think you are, Chris? Yeah. So if you are watching on social media on the True Consequences Facebook or on Twitter or on YouTube and you want to participate in the conversation, you're out of luck. But you can fix that. You just come on over to getvocal.com and join the stream and you can chat in real time and I can see what you're saying. If you are commenting on Facebook, I'm not going to be able to respond right away, but I will get to it eventually. So if you want to participate live, you can go to Get Vocal or you can download the app on your mobile device and you can chat with us. So that's what's going on. So Chris, welcome to the show.
Yeah.
I just recently started to kind of get to know you and I know we kind of connected on social media when I first started my podcast.
Yeah.
But you're another local podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
You're also part of the amazing Barelas Podcasters Guild that we are creating from the ground up. It's a startup, and that's fun. And yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to be the worst interview. I'm just going to say yes and no.
Well,
I'm just kidding. Oh yeah, totally. We kind of connected, but then it's like when you meet people on Facebook and you meet people on Twitter and Instagram, you kind of know, you don't really know them. I mean, and then when we've actually got to meet in person, which is actually really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people still do that. It's a thing still. So it was really awesome to kind of put a body to the whole persona, because also as podcasters, I mean, we portray what we want to portray, or maybe what we don't know we portray, and if people meet us in real life and they go, oh wow, you're actually different than I expected. I get that every once in a while.
You're much shorter and balder than I thought you would be, is what they would say to me.
You were taller than I thought you would be. So,
well, that's nice.
I always so, I don't know if you're bald, so I don't know.
Oh yeah, completely bald.
Oh dang,
yeah, dude.
On purpose, or
well, it's thinning on top, right? So I just shave it. I'm not dealing with it.
You're supposed to just say like, yeah, man, I'm really into Jordan, man. It's cool.
I'm going for this whole Vin Diesel thing. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm more like Danny DeVito than Vin Diesel.
And everybody's probably watching. They're like, this guy's not drinking. I'm drinking I call him bubble water. I'm going to switch to a beer here in a second. I just didn't want to. If I start drinking beer, then I'll forget this, and then I'll pick it up later, and it'll be full, and it's like
hot and gross. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I'm having actual water because I'm lame tonight.
Yeah, I mean, When you
But
come to my podcast, you better not be drinking water. I'm just kidding.
okay. All right. Sounds good. So, let's talk about your show. So you've been doing this for a
This
while.
is the 15th year. It was 14 years in July. And so this is like the 15th year. Like next July will be 15 years total.
Holy cow.
Crazy journey. Yeah. And it's weird because I mean it really didn't feel like that at all. I mean, as a podcaster, sometimes you wake up and you're like, oh, I don't want to do a show today, and then you don't do the show, and then if you're really a podcaster and you're really into this and you don't do that show, then you'll think about like how you didn't do that show and you really want to. You're like, I need to get on the microphone.
Yeah,
I need
totally.
to. So 15 years going, and everybody's like, how long are you going to do it? I'm going to do it until I don't like doing it anymore. And so far, I always feel like there's always room for evolution, always room for growth, even still after this long time. So
Sure. Yeah. So Max said that podcast fatigue and guilt is real. And Fern said, yes, that was literally her this morning. She had the same issue.
Yeah.
We understand for sure.
Right.
So tell us about your show. Tell my listeners about your show, what you guys do, what you talk about, what it is.
Do you want, you probably you don't want the history. You probably just want to know like what people can expect if they listen, right?
Well, you can get both if you want. We have time.
Yeah. So like, whenever I started, there was the word podcast was not a well-known word. It was very synonymous with like something that nerdy people did. And, I was a property manager 14 something years ago. And I had to mow a lot of lawns, and I had an iPod, and I was listening to music, and I got tired of the music. So then I was on iTunes, and I was like, what is a podcast? So I downloaded them, and I realized like, oh, these are people that are doing this on, this isn't like a radio program. This isn't like professionally done media. This is someone doing this on their own in their house. And some were exceptional because there was a lot of former radio people starting it out, and then there were some that was just really terrible. And the terrible people, they give you kind of a false sense of hope at the beginning. Because you're like, oh yeah, man, if this person can do it, I can do it. So a trip to Radio Shack with my friend, and we got all the stuff we needed. And I mean, I was doing 1 hour shows 5 times a week for, I'd say 6 months.
Wow.
And then, we lost one of our co-hosts. I'm the only original member of 10 Drink Minimum. I have 2 co-hosts. We just lost one. When you watch our show is kind of like we do a 2-hour live show like this every Sunday, 6 to 8 p.m. And there's no we call it a beer and lifestyle show. That's the best way we can describe it. I mean, is the show completely about beer or drinking? No. It's like the way I've heard people describe why they like it is it's like when you're hanging out with your friends on say like a weekend, and you're just drinking, and everybody is just like, like the conversation is kind of going all over the place.
Sure.
You could talk about one thing for like 20 minutes, and then all of a sudden somebody like mentions a word, and you're like, oh, speaking of that, and then it just veers off into another direction. And that's kind of our show. I mean, we have guests. I mean, we'll have like the owner of the United. We'll have a brewer on. We'll have a lot of, I've pretty much, if they're in the local Albuquerque music scene, I've probably interviewed them most likely. And so, and we do it like it's a little different from here. Like people, like you were talking about how people can, you can't see what they're messaging on YouTube or all that. On the one I have, like people can, if you're on YouTube or you're on Facebook or Periscope, you can, I can see what you're saying, and I throw it up there. And so we kind of bring the audience in, and it's kind of like an all-income, like that's what it's evolved into. Like I really enjoy a good like audience participation, and like I like to have people sometimes veer the conversation, like they can come in and they can, say something. And for the most part, people are pretty, we don't really get a lot of like heckler stuff. Now people probably are, but it can take us, and people are always like, how do you script out your show? And I'm like, I don't. We like turn it on. And I mean, I may have like one thing that I'm like, tonight I want to talk about this on the show, but most of the time I don't have anything,
Right.
or if we have a guest, I've kind of done my research on what they've done. But sometimes like it really helps out. Like we did a show one time at a weed dispensary in Colorado. Like we were in the dispensary. And I was like, I'm going to do all kinds of research on this stuff before we get there. And I got drunk the night before and I did none. And it turned out for the better because I was like the ignorant American asking all the questions that people really have about what it's like to have a state with legalized marijuana. And people were like, that was the best show I've ever heard. Cause like you were asking everything that I wanted to know. Cause a lot of people really don't know like what it, cause there's a lot of states out there that don't have it. And so, it's not like you walk into a dispensary and people are really, listening to reggae music and just smoking, like a cloud of smoke you open the door and it comes out. It's not like that at all, which I thought it was going to be. I was like, man, it's gonna be crazy,
Yeah. It's kind of like a liquor store, right? But with just pot everywhere.
I would say in some ways, yes, it's like a liquor store, but in some ways it's a lot like, I don't know. Cause I've been in several now. I guess you could say it's like a liquor store where they make everybody, it's like a liquor store now. So
right.
like you go to a liquor store now, if it's a small one, like they'll make you stay outside unless there's, if they're at capacity. So when you walk into the dispensary, most of the time, like you have to stay in the lobby and, once they're ready for you, then they'll bring you in. It's really weird, but
weird.
And I've seen them set up like you ever see like a mom and pop, like, shoe store, and they have just like random, like the wooden ladder with the blanket on it and stuff.
Yeah.
I've seen some like that. I've seen some that look like a Starbucks. I've seen some that look, so it's very weird. And it's an interesting world. And to go into that and like sit there and get to talk to somebody who does that on a daily basis was really cool. And being like I had no idea. So, I had no idea that they had, and they showed me like, it was funny. Cause like, I don't know how it is now, but when we went, this was a couple of years ago, they couldn't accept anything but cash because that's because of the federal law. And so they had these huge, huge safes, and they showed them to me. And the guy was like, "Yeah, man." He goes, he's like, "I could take like $250,000 to the bank at any time." I was like, "Jeez, wow!" I was like,
"That's insane."
Like I probably should have told you. I was like, "Yeah, I don't. I'm not doing nothing."
You're like, I'm hungover. I'm not. Don't worry about me.
Yeah. You could fight me. You could push me over in the parking lot and just take over. So,
so that's so cool. So you cover a lot of like local, we'll call them celebrities or businesses, and hang out with those people.
I get what. So when when podcasting started, you kind of had like, it was kind of a free for all. So you could kind of like you could get a lot of listeners. Because, there wasn't a lot of podcasters out there, but there were people getting iPods, and iPhones. So you could get a lot of listeners. But then all of a sudden, you had your Mark Barons, your Joe Rogans, your whoever, every comedian and every like actor decided that they wanted to have that this was the media to take over. And so it's a lot harder. So for me, it was like I went from doing like world pop culture events and all that to like what can I do that other people aren't doing? And so I did Albuquerque, which of course now other people are doing. Like we were doing like local Albuquerque stuff. I mean, geez, like 8 years ago,
Wow,
because that's what we could do over like getting some celebrity on our show, to talk about their, we just couldn't do it. We didn't have kind of clout,
Yeah. Well, I think that I kind of see that as a future of podcasting for every genre in general. I see that it's going to be more hyper local. It seems to be happening right now, especially in true crime. I mean, there were a handful of state focused true crime shows when I started, and now it's like almost every state has it, or region, and it's pretty cool to see that happening.
Yeah. And and it's so like this is what do they say, the most saturated media there is right now, especially with the pandemic going on. And the thing I would say is that has really been interesting is like how the evolution of the technology and the software has evolved. Because things that it was really interesting because, like, you know, you had a lot of people, like, if you didn't know how to do something, then like video, like, say 10 years ago, doing this would have been impossible. Like, where you and I are separate places. I mean, people could do it, but you had to be like really in the know, and you had to probably spend a lot of money to do so.
Sure.
And just watching the evolution of like where you can now walk into, like, you know, Guitar Center, and they have a podcasting kit.
Yeah.
Where, you know, before I would like ask people that, you know, do you guys allow foul language on this show? I don't know. Is that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can cuss all you want.
So, you know, I remember like asking people like how to do stuff. Cause, you know, basically what we had to do back at the beginning is we had to take recording equipment and try to figure out how to mesh recording equipment with a computer. And so it wasn't totally there. I mean, you know, it wasn't easy. And so
rigged.
So you would ask people like, hey, you know, you'd ask an established podcast, hey, how do you do this? And almost all the time it was like, fuck off. We don't go figure it out yourself. There was a very hardcore mentality at the beginning, and people like didn't want to help. It was like very few and far between of people who wanted to help. So a lot of times, you know, it was just like sitting there tinkering, hours and hours and hours of tinkering to figure out how to do one thing. And then now, you know, like people open an app on their phone and podcast now. It's like, it's insane. So
sorry, I was checking social.
No, that's fine. That's totally fine.
Oh, Tammy said, hey, it's two of my favorite people.
Nice.
Oh man. Yeah. You're like an OG
right
podcaster, which is really cool.
It's kind of weird. Yeah. And, you know, I'll be all back in my day in the early days of the podcast.
Before my favorite murder.
Yeah. Right. But
before Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I mean, those guys had no idea. Like for me, like the big crossover, the first big crossover was like, I mean, Mark Maron was pretty big, but like I remember, and like he's in a lot of hot water right now. But Adam Carolla, when he got fired or radio, and he came to podcasting, and even now, like he came and he was like one of the biggest. Like I think he was the biggest podcast for a long time. He's not anymore, but I mean, he was for a long time there. But I remember when that happened, and I was just kind of like, it was kind of like there that I was like, all right, things are going to change. And I kind of saw it. I was like, this is where everything, like, you know, the indie wave is crested, and now it's going to become mainstream. And then I remember like there was I don't know if you remember this, but there was like, you know, and I'm not saying Adam Carolla is a great guy or anything, because like, you know, I don't know if you've seen in the news as of the last 2 days, he said some really bad stuff. But there was a podcast or what do you call it, patent troll. They came out and started suing everybody, saying he paid for a patent that was really generic that could have been podcasting.
Really?
And, yeah. And so he tried to sue like the big ones, and Adam Carolla started a GoFundMe, and he raised like all kinds of money, and he like countersued the guy, and he beat him. And it was one of those things, if you wouldn't have beat them, I think they would have like shut this all down.
It would have been over, yeah.
Or we would be paying through the nose, you know, more than we already
That's
have.
insane.
Yeah. So I'm, you know, and I may have all, you know, this how do you patent troll?
So I need to say hi to Kateri, because I didn't get a chance. I waved at you, Kateri, but I didn't get a chance to say hi. Welcome. If you're watching again on social media, come to getvocal.com. You can chat with us. Otherwise, I'll have to check your comments sporadically. So you guys are on, you do a live stream on Sunday evenings for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it's like drinking at the bar, but not really. It's like a virtual bar situation. That's kind of cool.
It's like a virtual like hangout. Like when you listen to like, so my big thing is like when someone's driving to their job, you know, or home from the job, you know, both of those can be, you know, kind of daunting, you know, especially when you're driving to work. But if you have on the radio or you're listening in your headphones to like a bunch of people having a great time, might lift your moods.
Yeah.
And I've had people tell me that that's what it does, and I'm like, okay, awesome. If that's what it does for you, then that's amazing. Or you're running on a treadmill and and you hear me like, almost spit beer out of my nose, and then if it makes your workout better, then awesome. So
that's awesome.
That's my goal.
So anything else you want to say about your show before we get into murder?
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things like our show's not like, you don't have to like tune in every show. And like, the other thing too is people are like, oh, I don't want to listen to a 2-hour show. You don't have to. You can listen to like 20 minutes. And I'd say that if people want to listen to audio, I mean, we have tons of audio shows. Just give it a shot, check it out. And it's one of those shows you can kind of just come in and out, and and every once in a while we have a really good guest. People always go like, you need to have more guests, and I really enjoy guests, but like you can overdo it. And sometimes I just like to have fun and with my co-hosts and just vent on things that I hate.
Well, and you guys have a good rapport too. Like, there's like never a beat that's missed. It's really entertaining to listen and watch.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I encourage my listeners to check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I would say like, since we did join the Borellis Podcasters Guild, we've kind of all gelled together pretty easily, and I feel like a lot of us have kind of the same like, we shared experiences. We do the same thing. We're kind of in the trench together doing this, and that's not saying this is hard work. This is a lot of fun actually, but I feel like the group that we have, in that organization is what's going to make it successful, because we're all kind of, we have fun and we work at the same time. And I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you that don't know, so the Borellis Podcasters Guild is a brand new startup that we're starting here in Albuquerque, in the Borellis neighborhood. It's going to be amazing. So the general idea of it is we're building a studio, a podcast recording studio. We are going to rent that space out. Nice. Switch to beer. We're going to rent that space out to podcasters. We're going to also rent it out to anybody that wants to use a sound studio. And that's kind of like, that's the like okay part about it. It's kind of cool. It's kind of fun. The part I'm excited about is the fact that we're going to leverage the experience of all the podcasters, as well as the sound engineers and the people that we have in the guild, to teach people how to podcast.
Well, and that's actually kind of cool, because I mean, we have podcasters, but we also have people who aren't, but they are like literal, like real sound engineers that are involved. Like they've never podcasted in their life, but they've sat and recorded albums and whatnot. So we're legit.
Yeah. And then we're going to leverage all the shows together and hopefully get some local advertisers going. And I think it's going to be a really good experience, and I'm excited. We also want to bring in some interns.
Oh, hell yeah.
From like the Media Arts Charter School, Amy Beale High School, maybe CNM, some of these local educational areas, and teach some kids how to do some stuff, which would be fun too.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, you always want to have interns,
it's like free labor.
Years out of the fridge. What am I learning?
I said soy milk in my latte.
Yeah, there you go. Slap it out of their hand.
I'm gonna be a prima donna. It's gonna be amazing.
I don't want it. There you
go. Yeah, so that'll be fun. That'll be exciting. And if you're listening and you're like, hey, I want to start a podcast and you're in New Mexico, come check us out. Yeah. We will have a website soon. We're launching November 6th, I think.
It is November 6th, Friday.
Yeah. So that's our official launch date. And what was that?
D-Day.
Yeah. Right. And we're really, really excited to create this. It's going to be an awesome community. It's something that I wish I would have had when I started, because I had to learn all that stuff on my own.
Sure, wish I had it. not a
Yeah.
not the finger. Whenever I would usually have somebody, I was like, "Hey, can I have some help?" No.
Yeah, it's definitely not an easy thing to learn. So
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited to give back in that way. Okay, so I know you have at least one murder and maybe a murder that you were relatively adjacent
Yeah.
to talk about.
I definitely do. And then a ghost story. I have a ghost story as well.
Oh, fuck yeah. Okay, so
Mhm.
Alex, my co-ghost from Dos Pequeños, is actually
Uh-huh.
here. He's chilling in the
Yeah.
comments. So we'll love your ghost story, and with your permission, I'll snap the audio out of there and throw it into one of our Tiny Terror
Yeah,
episodes.
if you like it, I mean, yeah, definitely, for sure.
Okay,
It's
cool.
a downtown
Cool.
a downtown ghost story. So
Hell yeah, dude.
So for the murder thing, okay. So I've kind of like bounced around, like I grew up in New Mexico, and I lived in I grew up in eastern New Mexico, and other than my parents' house, 15 years when before we moved, actually 10 years. That was the longest I ever lived in a house. It was 10 years when I was growing up with my parents, and then we moved. So then after that, like I would kind of move like every couple of years because, when you're young and you just rent houses and you just get tired of them, you move. So in Albuquerque, I've kind of lived a couple places. But this house on Rosemont that I lived in just before this house, it was 311 Rosemont. I lived for 7.5 years. And we first moved in, my roommate and I. So in to the west of us was like a hair salon, and then like a Napa auto mechanic shop, not a parts store, but auto mechanic shop. And across the street is like Albuquerque Baths. And then next to them, when we first moved there, was like this. It was like an apartment or like a studio that they rented out to like artists, but then it really became like a small gym that people could rent and work out. And so then to the east of us was the only neighbor that we had that was like adjacent to our house. And there was people across the street from them. So this neighbor that was like adjacent to us, the only one, they were kind of that household that about once a month there was some sort of like craziness going on. So the story that I had, the background on them that I know is that our house was the only house on the block that was not owned by this older couple, and they lived down the street. And the house next to us was not only owned by them, but the people who lived in them, it was their daughter and her son, I believe. Her name was Crystal Montoya. I did not know that till today. Lived next door to them years, never knew the name. It was just they were just those neighbors that I just really wasn't excited to like, start loaning things to, or, get in the habit of that. For example, one time we were in our house and we heard a commotion, and we, did the thing you do with the blinds where you put your fingers up and you pull the blinds down. And Crystal and some other woman were fighting over this guy. And when I say fighting, literally, like they're like yelling at each other, and then one slugs one in the face, and they started trading punches to the face right in front of our house. And like we had this white picket fence, right? And so finally they how like wrestlers do like the collar and elbow lockup. They went to do the lockup, except they grabbed each other by the hair. And I don't know which one was which, but one was trying to slam the other one's head into our fence. And I was just like, holy shit, and then all of a sudden, the one that was about to get her head slammed in the fence, she goes, "If you let me go, I'll leave." And so the other girl or woman does. And so the girl starts leaving, like she said, and the one who got the upper hand is like walking next to her, and she's like, I told you, I knew it, like just. So that was like one of the like, and then they constantly were fighting with the neighbors across the street. Like,
I just need to say, this is the most New Mexico story I've ever heard in my entire life.
They get to fight with the neighbors across the street and this would be middle of the day. This wasn't at like like
Right.
10 o'clock at night. This is like at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
2 in the afternoon.
And it would happen. And then the owner of the spa, because, you know, he owns a spa where people are outside and it's supposed to be relaxing. They just have got a massage. And there's people like, fuck you, bitch. And like, just like throwing, you know, and he would come out and he would like try to calm him down. And like, he would tell him, he's like, you need to calm down. I'll call the police because I have, you know, I have people here who've paid to like relax and you're screaming at each other. And they would tell him to, you know, F off. And then the cops would come. So that was, you know, stuff like that was about a once a month, you know, thing. And like, you'd see the guy, like literally we saw the guy 1 month and then a month later he had lost like 40 pounds. And I was like,
whoa.
And I only recognized him because of his face. I was like, whoa, and I told him, I was like, you see that guy? That guy lost 40 pounds, man. And so at some point, I think the grandparents had told them that they needed to move out. And I had only like kind of heard this, you know, and their power and everything had been shut off. And like, you know how at the beginning of the summer, the landlord comes over and they take the cover off the air conditioner, and at the end of the summer, so that stopped happening. And
okay, hold on. I have to explain this for the non-New Mexicans that are here. So, so in New Mexico, if you're anywhere that has any humidity, you're not going to know what the hell we're talking about. In New Mexico, we have AC, which like everybody has all over the country and all over the world. And then we have what's called a swamp cooler. And if you live anywhere that has any humidity at all, it's not a thing there because
that's
it doesn't
what it does.
work.
It creates humidity.
It creates humidity. And so it's basically like water and a fan. And that's how we cool our houses in the desert. It's much cheaper than an AC, and it's much lower maintenance than an AC, but it also doesn't work as well.
No.
Like if it rains at all, it's over.
It lowers the temperature maybe 10 degrees if on a good day. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they stopped taking that off. And then we started to notice like the mice population started to ramp up. So I kind of figured that they were kind of squatting.
Gross.
So from what I understand, like the grandfather kicked them out, or the dad. So the Crystal's dad kicked them out, and they just kind of broke back in and were squatting is what I'd heard.
Okay.
So one day I'm at work and my roommate texts me and he's like, hey, you're not going to be able to get home the normal way. You're going to have to come the back way, because on Rosemont, like there's, you know, you can take Broadway and it come in one direction, or you can come down Mountain and come the other way. Well, the Mountain way is a little harder to do, but not a big deal. So I'm like, okay. So, you know, and that was not an unusual thing, because the spa across the street, so many people would park in front of our house because there was no parking lot there. Also in a Mexican, for some reason, businesses open up and they have no parking lot and they expect people to just park on top of each other, I guess. I don't know.
Fucking figure it out.
So people were always like parking in front of our driveway and we couldn't get out and stuff like that. So that wasn't unusual. So I come home and I'm like, a normal day, and I come the back way and I see police like literally right in front of my house, right in front of my driveway. Like they're blocking my driveway. So I couldn't even pull in because we parked behind our house. I couldn't even pull in. So I had to pull in front of my house like I was visiting. Now I get out of the car and I go away from the police because I'm all about minding my own business till I get in the house and I can look out the window and kind of like try to guess what's going on. Mm-hmm. But then I hear the words that you just never want to hear in that situation. I hear, excuse me, sir, do you live here? And I turn and I go, yes, I do. And he's like, can I have a word with you? And I'm like, oh, geez, what happened here? What's going on? So I walk over and he's like, yeah, he's all, your neighbor over here. And he points at that house. He goes, stabbed her mom. And I think he said grandma. And that's why I thought it was her grandma. I thought it was her grandma till today, because I think the police told me that. He's like, stabbed her 13. He like a wealth of information. He's like, stabbed her 13 times in the neck. And I hear her stabbed in the neck, right? And you know, when you hear someone's like stabbed in the neck, you're gonna go, oh, you know, they bled out. But like if they bled out, there's gonna be blood everywhere. And there's not. There's like a little piece of like on the driveway of blood like this much, right? And then I see blood on the fence a little bit. And he's like, she's going to be okay. She's in a hospital, but she stabbed her for like $20. And I'm just like, yeah, that's what the cop said. And I'm like, okay, wow. And I go inside and I tell my roommate, and the cops kind of pack up and they, of course, and then they leave, right? So there's a house behind us that someone else lives in. And he was a new guy, so I didn't really know him too well. I never actually really got to know him, but but I could tell he drove like a big diesel truck, so I could hear him coming. So I go out and I kind of like wave him down. I stop him, and just so he knows. And I said, hey, these neighbors over here, like the woman stabbed her at the time, I thought grandmother, in the neck. And the cop said she's going to be okay. And the guy goes, oh, well, I was home earlier. And he goes, I wonder why there was a knife in my trash can. And I go, what? And he goes, watch, come here. And I'm thinking like we're going to go look in his trash can and there's going to be all kinds of trash and then like a knife's in it. No, we go over there and like his trash can has no trash whatsoever in it. And it has at the bottom of the trash can a steak knife with blood all over it.
Holy shit.
So immediately I'm like, okay. So I go 242 cops, and I call them and I'm like, hey, the cops were at my house earlier for an assault. I called it an assault because at the time it was. And I don't think they found the weapon, but we found it. And the lady's like, oh, the dispatcher's like, oh, you haven't touched it though, have you? And I was like, no. And she's like, well, we're going to send an officer. And they sent a guy over pretty quick. So if, if something's bad happening in your house, tell them you found a murder weapon and they'll come faster.
Yeah. They'll be there right away.
So the guy comes over and he guards it till the CSI can come and get it. And so then, that was the end of that day. And so then the next day we see what I now know is her son. Like these people who had been squatting and the father couldn't get him out. Boy, they packed up in like 2 hours and they had like 3 pickup trucks full of stuff and they got the hell out of Dodge. Right. So come to find out, a couple weeks later, the mom dies. And so I found the article. Do you want me to read the article from it's Albuquerque Journal? So it's Albuquerque Journal. Yeah. An Albuquerque woman who stabbed her mother to death last summer was sentenced this week to 6 years in prison for voluntary manslaughter. Crystal, 6 years?
6 years?
That's not very much, right? Crystal stabbed her mother, Louise, 13 times in the neck. So the cop was right on that. Hands and ears the afternoon of August 10th, 2017, according to court documents. In a statement to the court, Montoya said her mother struggled with mental health issues and had been abusive, but she did not apologize or say what led to the attack. I can't explain it, Montoya said. We both needed a lot of help. Crystal Montoya's son told police that his mother woke him up and told him someone tried to stab us. According to police, he saw his grandmother bleeding and rushed to help her. His mother walked outside and took Luis's purse and debit card and walked back inside without paying attention or rendering aid to Luis. Or it's Louise, probably. I'm saying it wrong. Crystal Montoya told police that her mother and son kidnapped her and were torturing her with medication and electricity and referred to tax payments. Montoya pleaded no contest to voluntary manslaughter in August, leaving her eligible for up to 6 years in prison. I assume because, Judge Stan Whitaker imposed the maximum sentence during a hearing. That's the maximum? In state district court, saying that Montoya had not offered any justifiable reason. My concern is if we have you out, if we don't have an explanation for it, and what tells me is it could happen again, he said. We don't know why. Could it happen to another family member? So that tells me there was definitely some issues. Montoya's attorney, Ed Bustamante, called the killing a crime of passion, and it said it occurred after years of frustration. He asked the court to suspend the sentence. I don't know how that... I think because they called it manslaughter, which kind of interesting. I guess because she died later? I don't know. I don't know how that works.
Well, it wasn't involuntary manslaughter, right? So I think because it wasn't a planned murder either, so it wouldn't be... The burden of proof on first degree and even second degree is a lot higher than it is on manslaughter. And Yeah. But 6 years, man, like that's.
I mean, the judge gave her as much as he could.
That's not
He
very
gave
much.
the maximum instead, which is terrible.
Well, and I think that's what happens. Like, I don't know if she had a record or not, but usually if you don't have a record, sometimes if you get convicted of manslaughter in New Mexico, you can get off with probation if you don't have a record.
Wow. I don't know. All I know is like,
Which is,
it was weird because people like, and I tell that story very nonchalant. People are like, how can you be like cold about it? And I'm like, well, I'm not cold about it. It's just, this is I was just chilling in my house the other day and I heard 3 or 4 shots and I don't know if someone died because of that. I mean, that's just,
that's how it is here.
Like, you look up and you're like, okay,
I actually found a bullet that went through my skylight in my living room. I think it was like 4th of July or something.
Totally.
So, people just
shooting up. And the other crazy one is like when you hear like, people, they'll talk about like in their city, you hear the dog bark and then the other dog barks. Here it's the pop, 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 pop. And then you're ta, 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 ta. It's like the one, the retort,
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, there's the retort. But, it was pretty terrible. And, we definitely had some issues like, with theft around like not like no one ever broke into our house, but like if you, like someone stole our grill and all that. And we had our, we thought maybe it was them, but like all that ended as soon as like they were gone. Like we never saw them again. I mean, never saw the kids again,
Mm-hmm.
nothing. I don't know what happened with that, but it was pretty quiet after that.
So what's up with the 40-pound weight loss? You think that was like drugs, or do you think it was?
I don't think it was sickness because I mean, there was definitely there was constantly people coming and going, and like one night we were sleeping, and about 11:30 at night, the son and his friend just fired off a gun like right outside of our house, and like boom, like I grew up in the country. It was like one of those things where like immediately. Like I knew what it was. I knew it wasn't a car backfire. I knew exactly what the report was. So I have a gun and I had it out and I was tippy toeing through my house and my roommate's like, what do you have a gun for? I was like, I don't know if they're going to shoot into the house. If they shoot into the house, and so I look out the window and they're just like chilling out there, like, hanging out, just shooting a gun off, so I definitely think there was definitely some drug issues going on. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's probably pretty smart to have a gun in that situation. You never was going to happen. So Alex wanted to know the secret to weight loss. And I think we established it's drugs. Did you ever watch,
absolutely.
Color back in the day? Do you remember when Jim Carrey did that? Like, I've been on 30-day binge of crystal meth and I've never felt better. And he's like super skinny.
Right. Well, it was definitely one of those things where like, I didn't ever see him do meth, but like when when you're living in a house and all of your, bills, all your utilities are shut off, usually there's some issue. And I mean, and you're living in a house that your family owns and they're kicking you out of it. I mean, I don't know.
Especially because it's pretty easy to get assistance with those things here in Mexico.
I don't want to assume that, but it was like we would just see things and we're just like, like, okay, that's cool. But there was always something like going on that, like, if it wasn't them fighting with the neighbors across the street, it was like a bunch of people, like just random different people just driving up and driving away. You're like, oh, okay, huh.
All right, let's shake it up. Let's go ghost
story.
So,
now. My roommate Billy and our friend Candace. So it was the 3 of us, and I was one of those people. I'm one of those people that like I go like my mom is really big into like ghost stuff, and she would keep wind chimes around inside the house because supposedly you can see get the spirits. They'll move the chimes, and for me it was just always like, okay, whatever, until this one night. So there used to be this bar and grill, I guess you could call it, downtown, called the Blackbird Buvette. Well, our good friends owned it, and so there was many a night that I mean, it's been long enough that I can say all this. It was there's so someone says Smiley worked there. That is correct. Smiley is, if you know who Smiley is, that's my co-host from 10 Drink Minimum.
So Alex worked with me at the Hyatt and Smiley.
Very
we
cool.
all worked together in the same restaurant.
And so yeah, Smiley did work there. So we're there after hours, which we got to do many a time, which, you know, totally illegal, but, you know, sometimes the people who own the place would say, hey, we're going to close, go on outside on the patio, we're going to shut the door, and we're going to have some drinks. And we had drink till like 3 or 4 in the morning. Well, since you can't, you're not supposed to do that, they would be like, don't go out the front, go out the back when you leave. So the back of the Blackbird Bubette has it's now Red Door downtown. So down that patio, there's like 2 doors that go out into the alley. So Candace, Billy, and I, we decide, you know what, we're like ready to go, and so we're like, okay, you know, let's head on out and go drink some more somewhere else. So we open the back gate, and immediately, like, there's a grease trap out there that really stinks really bad. And so we walk out those 2 doors, and immediately to the right, we see a guy squatting down next to the grease trap, and we like startle him. And so he gets up, he like jumps up, and he starts walking like to the south. And we're a good 10 or 11 feet behind him. And we're just walking, the 3 of us, like, you know, talking back and forth. And, you know, we keep pretty good pace behind him, and it's a pretty good long alley. So he gets to the end of the alley, and he turns, and none of us ever saw his face. No one ever saw his face. He gets to the alley, and he turns, and, you know, around the corner, and then we get to the around the corner, and he is gone. And there is nowhere that he could have gone. Like, I can show you. He just
disappeared.
Like that. If he would have had to have ran 100 miles an hour to get away fast enough to like move, like, and we like get to the end, like we're like, he turns the corner, and we're like, you know, 10 or 11 feet behind him, and we turn the corner, and we're like, where the fuck did that guy go? And we look, and he's gone, nowhere to be found. And we like walk the same direction. We're like looking around, and we're like, what the fuck? Is like, how could this have happened? Like, did he rappel up the wall? I mean, and to this day, I'm like, there's no way that could have happened. Okay.
All right. I have questions. What was he wearing?
It's been about 8 years, but I mean, he had on like, I want to say like gray jeans, and then like a white like shirt that was dirty, and then like a vest, and that's all I could probably tell you.
So it's not very like time specific, right? Like that could be any time when people dress like that.
It was,
I mean,
it was one of those things. I mean, we thought he was just like a homeless man shooting up. Like every one of us thought that. Like we all thought it was like some dude that we startled while he was like shooting up. But he wasn't in a hurry. He just like jumped up. No one saw his face. He turned away from us, started walking, you know, down the alley. We were going the same direction. Turns a corner. We turn the corner like right after him, and he's poof gone. Like he did, like something just reached down and grabbed him and took him away. And like what the hell was that about? You know. And so to this day, like anytime we talk about it, all 3 of us are just like, you know, that was one of the creepiest. No, yeah, and it was like it wasn't like in a house. It wasn't like, you know, and that's where like my mind was like blown, because like I just couldn't explain it. Like I can't explain. Like I could take you there, and you could say, well, he ran over and he hit, but that's where we went and looked, because it immediately freaked us all out. We're like, what the hell, you know?
And your mom's like, that was 100% a ghost for sure.
That story, because no, I mean, I don't know, maybe
really.
To this day, I'm just like, I want to explain it. I'm like, I want to know how that happened. I want to know, you know, how this guy, where he went, you know, and I just, I mean, right now I kind of went, ooh, you know, because I was there, and I like walked out, and like, you know, because at first, you know, when you walk out that gate and he jumps up, you're like, ooh, sorry, fella, we didn't mean to bother whatever you were doing. And then all of a sudden it's like, where the fuck did that guy go? And everybody's like, what the fuck? You know, and we're just like, all of a sudden we're attentive and we're like, whoa, you know, and we're looking, we're like, maybe he, and you're like, there's no way he could have ran it. Cause there's no like down the block, there's a duck in, but he would have had to been the fastest human being alive. I don't know. No idea, man.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my story.
That's insane. So Alex said residual
Right.
base
Well,
head
I mean,
ghost.
I was like, maybe it was a guy that like overdosed in that alley and died. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I
Who
mean,
knows? Yeah, I don't know.
it's possible.
I
All right. So we
Yeah.
have 15 minutes. I don't know how much you want to get into the murder adjacent story.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in it. It's a case that actually Alex and I covered together. And then I almost want to go back and cover it again because I feel like we missed a lot of stuff on that episode, but I'd like to hear your take on that.
I don't know. I'm sorry. Did I miss? So I missed something there. So you want to talk about which story did you want to talk about?
When you work for Chevron.
Sorry. Yeah, I forgot about.
Is there anything there?
So I used to work for Chevron, and there's not a lot about this that I know. So whenever you're talking about the bone collector guy, right? And I don't know a lot about. I just I remember when it all happened. Whenever they started doing the redoing, building all the houses out there. I remember when they were building that high school out there that I just recently saw again for the first time in probably 8 years. And I was kind of blown away by how much more they'd added. So yeah, when they started adding, finding all those bodies out on the West Mesa, I used to work for a company that was the Chevron franchisee for Albuquerque. Had like 32 stations. And one of them was out there on 9 Mile Hill. And the 9 Mile Hill station was a truck stop. It had like a dirt parking lot. I'm sure it's still there. And we would go out there and work on the gas pumps and, clean out. So fuel tanks get water in it. So when you pump gas, I don't know if I didn't know this before I did this for a living. So, when you go to pump your gas, it's coming out of the tank in the ground. And so in order for that to happen, the tank has an outlet and then it has an inlet to pull air in so that the tank doesn't crumble. And so a lot of times we'd go out there and so of course air has water in it, and it gets water in the tank. So we would go out there to clean the water out of the fuel tank because you can't have more than an inch of water in a fuel tank. And as you're out there doing this, it can take a couple hours sometimes. See the ladies that work in the parking lot of the truck stop, and they'll jump down from a truck and go over and like knock on another truck, and they'll open the door and they'll hop on in. Well. So, as a person that moves around to these gas stations and works, you get to know all the workers, and when all that happened, where they started finding these bodies, and they were like, because I remember like it was on the news. I would be in that gas station, and the workers would be like, "Yeah, man, this lady came in all the time, that lady came in all the time," and so they knew them, like they worked in the parking lot, so to speak. They were ladies of the night that worked in the parking lot, and so it was kind of like it like really like scared them and creeped them out that like these women who worked as ladies of the night, and they just all of a sudden disappeared, and they'd be like, yeah, we wondered like what happened, because they'd come in and use the bathroom. They'd come in and buy water. They'd come in and, buy something to eat. And then all of a sudden, they do that for like, months at a time. And then all of a sudden they were gone. And they were like, we wondered what happened to them. And then, they find their body in the mesa, So that was kind of, pretty close to home. Yeah,
man. It's one of the biggest cases here in New
Yeah.
Mexico, and it's still unsolved.
Yeah, go ahead. My
it's
cohort,
really-
Holly Ann,
Go ahead.
she's actually trying to write a book on it, and she's interviewing a lot of people. So, yeah, I had no idea
Nice.
until recently.
I look forward to
She just
reading
told
that
me,
when it's
like,
done.
today, actually.
It's such a sad story, and the worst part about it is the fact that these women went missing.
Yeah.
Years
Right.
prior to their bodies being discovered, and their families. Some of their families were just hounding the police to do something.
Yeah.
And because they were sex workers, and because they were somewhat, expendable in the mind of society, those concerns went largely ignored for years.
And
it's horrible.
I hate, this is something I found out recently, and it really alarmed me. And someone had to point it out, and it says something about my privilege that someone had to point it out. But when we have Balloon Fiesta, it's kind of a unwritten thing to take all of the undesirable, like, sex workers and homeless people and push them to the outskirts of the city, like 9 Mile Hill. And when someone told me that, they're like, "You just watch, it's Balloon Fiesta, though. You won't see any." And I live downtown, and I lived over on Rosemont, like I was saying, which, if you go down 1st or 2nd Street north of the or south of I-40, I mean, there's homeless encampments, and all of a sudden it's Balloon Fiesta and they're all gone.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell? Like, I'd never, because I never thought to look at that. And someone's like, you watch during Balloon Fiesta, that'll all disappear. Sure shit, it did. Like, all of a sudden, because, like, you go down 2nd Street tomorrow, and I mean, you're going to see, 15 to 25 homeless people, like little tent cities. And then all of a sudden they're gone for like 3 weeks. And it's like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden 3 weeks later, they're right back where they were, just so we don't show tourists that we have, these problems. And throw away people, exactly like I said in the chat.
Big problems.
And so, that's why I felt that all that, that led to that. I mean,
it's just such a horrible mentality to have.
No,
nobody deserves to be murdered, and they certainly don't deserve to be forgotten. So I think that I think what happened was a travesty, and I hope that things are getting better. I don't know that they are, because I'm not in that world. But I know that there's organizations like Street Safe New Mexico that do a really good job of helping people in situations that are tough, whether it's trafficking or sex work or whatever. And if you can donate money to organizations like that, I would highly recommend that you do that. So
absolutely,
that's just in general to everybody listening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, man, we've got about 7 minutes. We don't have to go the whole 7 minutes, but I just want to see, is there anything else you want to say? I want to, first of all, say thank you
for having me on, man.
For hanging out with me, man. This has been fun.
I'm trying to think if I have any, like, crazy stories like that. I know that, like, like I was born, like when I was born, I don't know the whole story, but like a woman was murdered and they threw her body in the hospital parking lot. And then when I was born and I had to stay at the hospital.
Holy shit.
So then when, like, my parents came to pick me up, that was like the only parking spot that was open. And I was like, my parents were like worried that was a bad omen. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So, so I don't know. When you live in Albuquerque, for people who live outside of Albuquerque, you get a little bit of an edge. And when you go and you don't know it, you really don't know that you do until you go to other cities. And I'm not saying I'm gonna, like, walk around in the worst parts of Chicago, but I mean, I like when I was in Chicago, my friend was like, "Be careful," and I was like, "Dude, I don't feel any kind of, this doesn't bother me at all. I mean, walk where I walk, like I was riding my skateboard down the street yesterday, and some dude just started screaming towards me. I know, and I didn't even flinch. I just kept going, and unfortunately, that can like also lead to bad things. I've had friends that have like been jumped downtown, and bad things happen. But we kind of live in a when people say, "Oh, Albuquerque's full of crime," and it offends us. But then on the other hand, like it's true. Don't park your U-Haul
It's true.
anywhere in the city. Don't if you're traveling through Albuquerque and you have a U-Haul,
ever
do not stop here. And that's not a funny joke.
Yeah. Keep going.
Yeah,
Keep going.
and I love this city 100%. and we definitely live by the credo.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to say a bunch of bad things about my city, but if you do, it's on. I'll cut your brain, dog.
If you do, I'll cut you.
And but,
well, it's funny you said that because like I remember one time I was in San Francisco and I took a wrong turn and I ended up in the Tenderloin, and I didn't even it didn't even bother me. I'm like, yeah, there's people like strung out on the street.
I was in Phoenix one time, and
just kept walking.
I was calling a friend to meet up with them, and they're like, and I'm like, yeah, where do you want to meet up? And they're like, well, where are you at? And I tell them, and they're like, oh my God, that is the worst part of town. You're going to get killed. And I was like, looks okay to me. It's all right. Fuck, I don't know.
It feels like home. Yeah. But, for all the bad, there's also a lot of really good stuff here. I mean, it's beautiful. The scenery here, you can't beat it. It's amazing. The weather's great.
I had to pull up to find that story. I had to pull up all the homicides on a map of each year, and it is way less than I thought. Way less. And I was like, oh, there 2000, because I was trying to remember what year it was, and I was like, oh, 2017. There was my house, and the dot's like right there in front of my house, and so I mean, we like you said, it's beautiful. The sunsets are amazing. Actually, let's take all of that back, because I don't want you people to move here. There's car fires everywhere, medical waste in the street, blood puddles. Yeah.
You get stabbed as soon as you walk off the plane.
They give you a Ziploc bag of green chili and stab you right in the abdomen.
That's amazing. Oh, shit. Well, it's been a lot of fun tonight, man. I think we're going to wrap it up here, but thanks for hanging out, and stay safe.
Check out our show.
Anything else you want to say before we close?
Similar experience than that. Our show's a lot like this, where we have a good time and entertain. Sunday night, 6 to 8 p.m. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube, and we're on what's that? What is that? Periscope. I don't really. I've never used Periscope. I did that. I just chose that because I got a third option, and I was like, I don't want to do Twitch because I tried it and I didn't like it.
So it's at 10 Drink on Twitter.
It's 10 Drink. If you Google 10 Drink Minimum, you can go to our website, 10drinkminimum.com. It's all there. So cool. Well, big clap for having me out.
Awesome.
It's been great. I enjoyed it.
All right, everybody. Have a good night. Yeah, me too. Hang out for a second. I want to hear your Santa Fe thing. But I'm going to stop the broadcast. I'm going to say good night to everybody. Stay safe. And hey, it's chili season. Go buy some chili. I just bought a bunch of it. It's amazing. And get Socorro chili or Limitar chili. Do not get Hatch chili. That's all I'm going to say.
I also hear they run
Hatch
out and then they buy
overrated.
some from China and pass it off. That's what I've heard.
Oh,
cool.
Socorro chili is legit. Okay.